So this is I'll give you a little bit of background. I started a series like last spring, right before we got shut in the house. Like literally right before. And it was called Cocktails and Conversations, and it was supposed to serve this purpose of like helping small businesses and other like interesting people like share their stories and tell about the things that they're doing. And then like all the ideas that I started having for it were like unrelated and more so like related to the blog that I have, my personal blog, which is like all about like Black women and Black women's issues and stuff like that. So I was like, well, why make people filter through if that's not what they're there for? So I'll just start another one. So it's kind of like a spinoff of sort. But so you get to be the first on the new platform.
Yeah. I love it.
So we're gonna we'll talk about like all things LaunchCrate, and we'll definitely talk about like all the books that you've written, especially Sugarplums. And we'll talk about like your journey as a small business owner and what that's been like for you. So
sounds good.
So first we'll start with LaunchCrate. So tell me about LaunchCrate. Well, no, we'll start with who is Cynthia?
Cynthia, I like how you focus on that first, right? Because I sent you my bio, and I know you probably read it and were like, yeah. Yes. I am, gosh, how do I describe myself? Usually what I tell people is that I am a story shepherd and the founder of LaunchCrate Publishing. And then sometimes I wear the author hat as well. Overall, I would consider myself an educator, and I kind of take that perspective and that lens with everything that I've done throughout my career. And LaunchCrate is no different. So I absolutely love getting to help people figure out what it is that they're passionate about and how to go do that thing. And I did that in education when I was working with middle and high school students. I did that with my work at UMKC, and now that's continuing in my work with LaunchCrate as well.
So when you sent me your bio, you described CL Fails as your alter ego. So I'm like,
absolutely.
So how do the two different? How is CL Fails different from who you are?
CL Fails is like the creative alter ego to Cynthia. Cynthia is the driven, focused, analytical side of me. And then CL Fails is like the globally creative, just whatever comes to mind, let's figure out a way to do it kind of person.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
Because you have to have both, right?
Absolutely, especially as a small business owner.
Because you have to have that thing that's like, oh yeah, this is a bright idea, and then you have to have that person that's like, it's like the devil and the angel on two shoulders. Like you have to have a person that's like, yes, just go for it, and then you have to have that person that's like, let's
here's
make
how we
this
get there, right? Yeah. Because it can be a great idea, really creative, and I can run with it, but what direction am I running in, right? So
right.
Yeah.
I do that all the time, especially me, because I always have so many different ideas. Like, oh, I want to do this thing and I want to do it now. But I'm like, okay, well, what, like, how do you get there? Like, what does it look like? And how's it going to happen? And
that's when the research side of me kicks in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you tap into your creativity and also your background as an educator when you are like writing and publishing books, especially because you have children's books, you reach kind of different audiences. And
I was talking to somebody about this, maybe that was yesterday or 2 days ago or something, and someone was interviewing me, and they were like, well, what types of books? It was yesterday. So they were like, what type of books have you written? And I said, well, I started with children's books. And then somewhere in there, I wrote a nonfiction book about my grandfather and the stories of his life. And I said,
I
and then I
remember
went
that
back
book.
to, yeah, and I went back to children's books. And then somewhere along the way, I became a romance novelist, and I didn't see that one coming at all.
So, so why children's books though? Like, what made you want to try that first?
When I thought about my work as an educator, and no, when I say I worked with middle school and high school students, I also worked with preschool and elementary school students, and they were my first start. When I was in college,
Okay.
I was working with the Kansas City Freedom Schools, and they gave me the babies. So I had the kindergartners,
My sister
and
worked for Freedom School.
yeah, absolutely love it. Like, it's a part of who I am. And it, just their love for reading and the way that we could communicate through books, the way that they could learn new concept through books, that kind of became a part of like a fiber of who I was. And even when I was working with middle school students, you know, we would create these stories to help teach the life skills concepts that we were working on. So that was kind of a natural lean for me to children's books, and specifically the Ella book series that you see up there on the shelf
Mm-hmm.
behind me. Those are geared towards third through not third third through eighth grade, not really 3 through 8 year olds. And they all focus on building a superpower within you. So they're all focused on the power of something. So we're still instilling life skills or life values or critical skills that they'll need to learn how to navigate through the world. So it was kind of an easy lean for me.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, did you publish your first book by yourself, or did you work with the publisher initially?
So the first book that I published was The Christmas Cookie. It's a story about a cookie that wakes up on a plate meant for Santa on Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And I published it in between working for the scholarship company that I was working for and starting to work at UMKC. And how do I say this without completely dismantling? It's okay to completely dismantle this company because what they were doing wasn't right, right? So, so I was using a go-between. I did a lot of research to try to figure out whether or not I wanted to, you know, query an agent and have them try to shop it to some big publishing houses, or whether or not I wanted to do it myself. And everything that I saw said that the authors were getting the short end of the stick. And I was like, well, this doesn't make sense because it's their work. You wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
anything to publish if they didn't write it. So I decided I was going to publish it myself. Thought I found a company that was reputable and good. And the book that I sold, The Christmas Cookie, was supposed to have a $5 profit margin per copy sold. And I was getting 14 cents a copy because the other company was taking a cut because they pushed a file, not a file they helped me create. Like, I did the design and the layout and the cover and everything. They didn't do anything except push a file. And I started looking at all the other books that they had published, and it was hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of books. And I was like, people are just settling for this,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be like that. So that was how I started leaning into other options to try to fix that piece of the publishing world.
So, what led you to LaunchCrate?
Exactly that. Yeah. I was like, let me see if there's a way that I can do this so that creatives are getting paid for the work that they're doing. Because,
Yeah.
you know, the publishing industry was much like the music industry, where people that were writing the songs or the people that were singing the songs were not getting the best cut of the profit. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting the short end of the stick as a creative, and they just carry that over. But, you know, I think about it, that's kind of the American way. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
that has to stay like that, but yeah, that's kind of our history
Capitalism.
in this. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
people were getting work for free. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of free labor on the backs of everybody else. And
Right. Exactly.
they're sitting
And
high
then you
on the
just
horse.
profit. Yeah. And then
And
you
you're right.
profit from it.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's
So,
see if we can flip the tables on that. So that was how
yeah.
LaunchCrate was born.
So why LaunchCrate? What's in a name? What does LaunchCrate mean?
So initially I was thinking about soapbox, right? Because what I
Mm-hmm.
was essentially doing was providing an opportunity for people to have the soapbox that they could stand on and share their work with the world, their ideas with the world. And soapbox kind of has a negative connotation to it when you hear it.
Yeah, like
And
I'm
I
on
was
my
like,
soapbox.
yeah, like I'm up here just rattling off whatever I want to rattle off from my soapbox. But that was like, well, what's another way to say that we're giving them an opportunity to launch their work into the world? And I was like, well, we can give them the crate to launch their stuff from. So LaunchCrate Publishing was born.
I like it.
Yeah.
So what is like the diversity makeup of the publishing industry right now? Are there a lot of Black publishers?
We are smaller publishers, indie publishers. A lot of us are doing more of the publishing services work where we're
Mm-hmm.
helping like for a cost to do cover design or book layout or editing services, those types of things, as opposed to being more of a traditional publisher. But we're out there in our little niche groups.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still not making up for the ground that we were falling behind on before.
So how does LaunchCrate help to make room for Black creatives and authors?
So essentially, what we do is you heard me talk about publishing services before. So we offer publishing services with LaunchCrate. So really a one-stop shop for anything that you would need in terms of getting your books ready to launch and publish yourself. We coach you through that process. We just started a new initiative the last quarter of 2020 called Idea to Editor. So we bring in people with an idea, and through an 8-week process and master course, we'll guide them to the developed manuscript that is then ready for an editor to tackle. But we also offer traditional publishing as well. But ours, instead of having like a 60-40 split where 60 would go to the publishing company, we've swapped that. So 60% of the profits are going to the creatives and the authors, the people who have the book and that we get to publish. So that's kind of where we are. That's our little niche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why is it, I've always wanted to kind of ask this question, but why is it important for us to kind of like narrate and own our own narratives?
Mm-hmm. So for all of American history, we can say that, right?
Right.
Other people have come in and tried to tell our story from their lens of what they think our story is, but nobody understands our lens unless they
Mm-hmm.
have lived through lived in our shoes and walked the path that we're walking. And you can guess at what the lens is that I'm looking through the world, but you don't see all of the little micro experiences that I've had that have helped to shape the lens that I'm looking through. And so we're the only ones that can truly tell those stories in a way that resonates with our experience in American culture and how we see the world as a result. That's why it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then plus, like when you're going through an editing process, like you want somebody to be able to understand like what your book is about and what this experience is
And
and
little
where you're
nuances in
coming.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Absolutely.
people try to change things. And me as a writer, like myself in a different capacity though, like have always like when I'm sending things to like my editor, especially
Yeah.
like at work, for example, like if I'm sending things like to my editor, someone to edit, then it's kind of like, no, I intended for that word to be there like that, or that phrase to be there
Right.
like that. Like, I
Trust
get
me.
that that's important.
Yeah. 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 And I don't know that everybody has the experience of navigating through the world the way that people of color do, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially having to assimilate for safety purposes in American culture, and having people, particularly white people, threaten your livelihood if you don't assimilate and comply. It's
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Yeah.
We have developed ways of code switching, and that code switches in our language, that code switches in everything that we do. But if we are in a space that's welcoming, and we are sharing our stories, and then we get to take that extra weight off and take those extra layers off and just relax and be who we actually are. And there's so much
Yeah. That's
value
a
and
big
beauty in that.
conversation right now. That's a
Yeah.
that's a big conversation. Like there's so many like platforms who are like opening up this whole discussion about showing up as your full self and not
Yeah.
having to assimilate into
Hmm.
majority white environments, right?
Yep.
Because it's taxing on us to have to do it because like it's like you have to kind of work extra hard.
Right. And be underpaid still.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And undervalued.
Yes.
Yes.
So like I'm putting in all of this work for what?
Right. For what? Yeah.
So but LaunchCrate offers like more services than just publishing, right? So you also are like helping aspiring writers to like at every stage of their journey. So what
Yeah.
does it take to like guide someone? What is that process like from ideation to like final draft of publishing?
It varies depending on the author, um, and how fully fleshed out their idea is. Some people come to me and they're like, I have this idea. And I'm like, that would make a great book. Where are you going
Mm-hmm.
to start with that? And they're like, I don't know. That's why I'm talking to you. I'm like, great. Well, let's sit down and chat about it. Right. So that you start with people there and help them to flesh out what their readers' outcomes are, what they want the reader to take away from their book. And then they can start to build an outline and then go back in and fill in the outline from there. Or you have people who come with an outline that don't necessarily know how to fill it in, and you work with them from there. So it just really varies depending on where people are and what they're writing.
So going back,
Mm-hmm.
so what are your favorite kind of books? Like who are the authors that you really like and
Okay.
what genres?
I'm about to sell on myself. I was and still am a huge Eric Jerome Dickey fan.
Mm,
Um,
I
so that
was
one kind
too.
of hit me. Yeah, that one hit me hard. Um, Also a Zane fan.
I love Zane
So
books.
it is,
We were reading
like
them in high school, and
guilty pleasure.
I don't think we knew like. Hold on,
Uh-huh.
I don't think we really knew like
Yeah.
when I was in high
Mm-mm.
school, like we were reading all of these same books and passing them around to our friends. I don't think we really knew what we were reading.
I hope
Like I
not.
think we had like some idea, but we
Uh-huh.
just loved those books. For
Yeah.
whatever.
So
I think it was like that inner rebel.
I
Like,
think that's probably what it was. Yeah. Well, I'm not supposed to be reading this,
yeah.
but I need everybody to know that I'm reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love
That's
her
exactly
books,
what it
love her
was.
work. I love books that make me laugh and books that make me think as well. So those could be
Mm.
fiction books, they could be nonfiction works as well. I just finished reading, what's the name of this book? You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey.
I saw that on
Woo.
your Instagram and you had
Uh-huh.
shared something about it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's so I feel so seen in that book.
I have to read it
Yeah. So
because my I always go into that reminds me because I always go into my like eyebrow appointments and I'm always
uh
like having a new story to like tell her like, oh, you'll never in the past like 3 weeks you'll never guess me. She was like, Kelsey, I always look forward to she was like, Kelsey, I always look forward to your appointments because like you just give me joy. She was like, I just always know that you're gonna come in and have like some new story to tell.
I
So
love it.
that's exactly what that book reminds me of.
Yeah. So they're talking about you know who Amber Ruffin is? She's
Mm-mm.
one of the Which show is she on? She's on one of the late night shows. I can't think of it now, of course. I'll probably think of it as soon as we end this live conversation. But she's always on talking about race relations and does it in a really humorous way, right? So she's talking about her and her older sister's experience growing up in Omaha, Nebraska, and how,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the Omaha nice. I'm like, ooh, like you could transfer that anywhere. Kansas City nice anywhere in the Midwest. Like that's a thing.
I have
It's a thing.
this. Just a second. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
This keeps my computer is being sorry.
It's all good.
I have a coworker who is from well, he grew up, I think, originally in like California, like South LA or something like that. And then like
Mhm.
he lived in DC and he lived like in South America for a while somewhere. I don't remember where. And then he and his wife moved to Kansas City, and he always says like, y'all are so Midwest nice. Like
It's a
everyone,
thing.
like no matter what it is, no matter what you have to say, like you're so Midwest nice. Like
Just give me the truth. At least I know where I stand, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good book. It's a funny book, but it's a serious book, and it's a book that makes you think too. So yeah,
I have to
that's
read
my
that.
jam.
Right now I'm reading Fire Next Time.
Ooh, James Baldwin.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love James Baldwin.
Yeah.
But that's the book I'm reading right now. And I had started it originally. I was supposed to finish it a long time ago, and then I just got busy, and so I pick it up and put it down. And I originally started it for a book club. But I missed that meeting, obviously, because I wasn't.
Listen, here's what you do when you have a book club and, and you haven't read the whole thing. You speak first, ask a question about what you have read, and then just listen the rest of the time.
I'm gonna try that.
That's how you do it. This is a pro
I
tip
don't
for you.
think I should show up today.
That'll be the time that they're like, "What do you think,
guys.
Kelsey?"
Yeah.
And you're like,
Well, I haven't actually read that part.
What happened was.
Yeah, exactly. So you said surprisingly you wrote a romance novel, and I've read. Let me tell you, I see a whole Lifetime movie in this, like Kelly Rowland and like the lead role. Like, leave it to me. I've got to figure it out. Like,
that's what people keep saying. They're like, Hallmark or Lifetime. Which one do you want to be on?
Yeah.
Like, what? All right.
So what inspired you to write Sugarplums, though?
So listen, that one, when I say surprisingly, like it literally came out of nowhere. So during the month of November, they have these challenges. It's called the National Novel Writing Month. You're supposed to focus on one book for 30 days, the entire month of November, finish with 50,000 words. That's the goal. So my goal was to continue The Secret World of Raine the Brain. I was going to sit down and write books 3 and 4 in that series, which are children's books for middle grade readers. And so I sit down, and the goal that you're supposed to hit is like 1,600 words a day. And if you hit 1,600 words a day, a little bit more than that, then you should be at 50,000 words by the end of November. So I'm like slugging it out. Well, I think it started on a Friday. November started on a Friday that year. And I'm slugging it out. And I'm like, why am I having so much trouble writing this book? Like, I can see it in my mind, but I'm struggling. So I hit 1,600, update my count. And I just had this nagging feeling the whole time that I'm not supposed to be writing this book. Like, it was just in my gut. Like, you're not supposed to be writing this book. And I was like, I'm writing this book. I'm typing away, like defiantly typing this book. And woke up Saturday. And before I started typing, you're not supposed to be writing that book. And I was like, well, what book am I supposed to be working on if I'm not supposed to be working on this book? And so I literally asked that out loud. And then my hand goes down and I just start writing out like the characters and the plot line. And I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes. And I sat down And I kid you not, in 13 days, I had 52,000 words written, and I was done with the first book. And I was like, who does that? What?
That's how you
Who does
know.
that? That's how you know that I'm supposed to be writing this book. And then I thought, surely that was a fluke, because writing a novel in half a month, less than half a month, that's
unheard of.
that's unheard of. It's ridiculous. And then 2020, in May of 2020, I sat down to write the sequel because I knew there was going to be a sequel after the first one was done. So mapped out again the storyline, plotted it all out, sat down and was like, let's see if I can get it done in 30 days in the month of May. 16 days, I was done with book 2. I was like, what is happening here?
So
this doesn't make any sense.
I saw when you posted the second book, and I was like, well, I didn't even know she had a first book. So let me read the first book. And I read the first book. I kid you not, I finished it in a week. Nice. I couldn't put it down. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, it just makes you feel good, you know? And so then I read the second book. And that one was a little bit thicker. So I was like, oh, it'll take me a little bit longer. I can't put it down. I finished it in a week. And I was like, okay, give me the third book, because I want to know what happens.
What happens?
I was literally rooting for Dr. Chris and Charlie. Like,
yeah.
I was like, please make it.
When I was editing the first book, I read through that book like 20 times. And every time I read through that book, it was like I hadn't read it before. Like I'm just engaged. And I was like, what is happening here? With this, I wrote the book. You would think that I would understand what was happening, that I would know, that I could anticipate. It was like reading it for the first time every time I read it when I was editing it. So, yeah.
I think because
this is really interesting.
You're reading it from a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to you're writing it like you're entrenched in it, like you're you're in it, you know. But then, like when you step back and you actually read the final product, you're like, "What did I write?" Like,
right? Like, oh, did I put that down? So I gotta tell you, the third book is done. I wrote it last November. Thought I wasn't going to pick it up to do any editing until March. I started the editing process at the end of January. I've been through it once, so I'm going back and doing my second run through, and I'll be doing the third run through probably before March gets here. So it's coming.
I'm excited for it. So, you know, and it's because, like, you know, Black love, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm here for that. And it's just because, like, it was just, they were meant to be together, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like everything that happened or everything that they encountered, I was just like, no, that can't happen because they're supposed to be together. Like, why are you being stubborn? Like, I would literally be like yelling at the book. Like, Kirsten said me too.
That's funny. So I gotta tell you, my dad picked up the first book and started reading it and got about almost through the first chapter. Got to page like 17 or 18 and put the book down. And I kept telling him, like, my dad is notorious for watching movies and being upset because it doesn't end right. And I'm like, so he's picked up the book and I'm like, Dad, it ends right. You need to pick the book back up. Just trust me on this. And so he finally picked it up again and read through it. And I get this text message. He was like, oh, the book was awesome. Way to go. I was like, wait.
Right, but it's like you have to wait for it because it's not until like I'm like, okay, I'm a few pages.
Oh yeah.
From like being finished, like what's gonna happen? I need you to pull it together.
Right.
Like that's not what you thought it was. Like this, like
I love it.
Your man.
I'm like, man, I got my dad out here reading romance novels. That's awesome.
And I'm a sucker for romance. Like I love romance movies. I love anything like, I don't know. I'm a sucker for romance. So that, you know, got me. And then just the storyline is, you know, and then they had the best dates.
They did.
And I was just like, so do you pull any inspiration from like your life and put it into the book?
A little bit, a very little bit, right? Because you don't want to put your personal business
Mhm.
in a book. I don't want people in my life like that.
Right.
But there was one instance that was in the book, and people always ask me about the part with the streetcar operator
Mhm.
in the first book, where she stops him and she says, "Don't ever stop loving each other." I actually had that happen to me in real life, and I was like, as it happened,
Oh,
it was this lady that was just like walking by on the street, and I was like, this random lady just says this to the two of us, and then she disappears, and I was like, "Did you know that woman?" And he was like, "I don't know who that woman is.
really?
We're in your neighborhood. You should know your neighbors." No, no. She just
That's
disappeared. And I
funny.
think it was for no other reason than for me to have the inspiration to put it in that book. So that's what I'm going to say.
I love it. I'm here for that.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think? Like, what do you think Dr. Chris and Charlie would be doing for Valentine's Day?
Who knows? Gosh, Charlie, he's such a romantic. He would probably plan like 2 or 3 different options and have her choose. Um, like a choose your own
I see
adventure kind
that.
of Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah. Who knows what they would do? What
um,
would you guess since you've read it and you know the characters? What would you see?
I don't know.
You know them.
I think I don't know. I don't know because it's like a pandemic outside, right? And
Hmm.
so I'm thinking like eventually, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they'll probably like plan some sort of like big like meal or like some sort of like in-home like fireplace picnic
Uh-huh.
situation
I can
with
see that.
the
Uh-huh.
with the flower thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I see where you're going. You need to write book 4. I'm going to
I
bring you
don't
in as a ghostwriter.
I don't think so. I'm just I'm just here to give my opinion.
There we go. I love it.
So, but why is it so important to highlight like Black love and courtships? Like, was that the intended?
Like,
Well, I guess you didn't know what
absolutely.
the intended purpose was, or did you know that that was the intended purpose?
No, I just knew that they had a story to tell, and that apparently I was the one that was supposed to tell it. But it's we're so often fed narratives that are counter to what we see on a regular basis, right?
Hmm.
You look around and friends that are coupled up and colleagues that are coupled up, their relationships are different than the relationships that are glorified on TV or in the movies. And
Yeah,
this is just everyday kind of love in their stories. And we need to tell those stories too.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, going back to LaunchCrate, like, what has your journey been like as a small business solopreneur? Like, what have been like your wins and what have been like your challenges?
I have pivoted so many times since 2017 and leaning into this full time in late 2017. So I left with an idea of how I wanted it to look, and some things didn't line up. Life happened, and then you
Hmm.
have to pivot. Then life happens again, and you have to pivot in this direction. And if you can stay, I tell people all the time that one of the things that I think is embedded in our DNA is creative problem solving, in
Yeah.
the fact that we have to learn how to navigate through the world in different ways. And if
Hmm.
you can lean on that side of you, and stay flexible and stay open to things not being as you visualize them,
Hmm.
um, then you'll be just fine. But I've had a lot of help from a lot of friends and a lot of family who have supported me, and messages from random people that just come in at the right time that say thank you for this, or I see what you're doing. Keep up the great work. And it's always at a time where I'm doubting whether or not I should continue to do this full time. And so
Mm,
if you find yourself feeling that you need to send on a message to somebody like that, send it to them, because there's probably a reason that you got that nudge, and those help. I am a
yeah.
living testament of the fact that they help. Yeah.
So, what was the final confirmation that you needed to focus on growing LaunchCrate full time?
So what was happening when I was at UMKC is that I was working there with first year experience students and early transfer students full time in the day. And then at night, I was writing and illustrating and publishing my work, and then helping other people learn how to launch their work as well. So it was like 2 full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at a position where I had to choose between those. And I was leaning towards betting on myself. And then I had one of the students who I was working with came in and was chatting with me about things that they were doing in grad school and what they were looking at for their future. And he said
Mm-hmm.
to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, first of all,
Oh.
you can't ask me that question.
I am grown.
It's like, wait, how are you just gonna flip the tables and become the coach? And then all of a sudden now I'm the one that's being coached. But it was at the right time, because it really made me reflect on what was important and
Yeah.
how I wanted to live my life, right? Did I want to look down the road 5 years, 10 years down and say, I wish I would have tried that? Or
Mm-hmm.
5 years, 10 years down, do I want to have this funny story about that time that I started a publishing company? Whether it succeeds or not, I'm going to give it my
Yeah.
best shot. Mm-hmm.
What is your big dream for LaunchCrate?
Big dream is turning this into something that is a model for how people compensate authors, right? So we're
Yeah.
making little ripples here and there in the Kansas City area. Worked with a couple of people in the California area. One is up in Washington State, right? So we're starting to trickle out. And as I speak at other conferences, I'll be speaking to the Women in Publishing Summit, which is a national summit in March.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you start to spread the word. And so the more we can spread our reach, I think the better, essentially, for creatives it will be. That's the goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh, so, like, how often do you collaborate with other small businesses?
As often as I can.
Yeah.
As often as I can. Yeah. So, we offer publishing services, and I've had a few people reach out recently, and their deadlines, their turnaround time was too short for me to help. But I know
Mm-hmm.
some other people who are doing the same type of work, and they might have like a smaller niche. So maybe they're not
Yeah.
a one-stop shop, but they're an editor, or maybe they help with design work. And so I'm reaching out to them like, hey, do you have the time and the capacity to help this person? Here, I'm going to make the connection and step out of the way.
Yeah.
Let's bring everybody with us, right?
Yeah.
It's not just
And then,
about one person and one
absolutely.
person thriving. We rise together. So let's all
Yeah.
rise at the
It's
same
more
time.
than enough. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you also have your books in like smaller bookstores too, because I got your
Mm-hmm.
second book from Bliss Books.
Yeah, they're awesome. I absolutely love them. They're doing some really, really cool stuff. Um, if you haven't followed them, you might want to start following them. I'm just saying,
I
people.
have.
Anybody who's watching, if you haven't, pay attention to what they're doing, because yeah, they're doing some cool stuff.
So have you has your business been impacted by the pandemic at all? I would imagine that you've probably been busier because people have more time to sit down and create, right?
Yeah. So not only do they have more time, um, like there's more pressure now. Like things are
Yeah.
more time sensitive. They've started to step back and reevaluate what's important to them. And that
Mm-hmm.
book idea that was further back because they were focusing on helping somebody else to live their dream and working for somebody else, it started to make their way to the front, right? So as they start to
Mhm.
make themselves and their lives a priority, then they're looking for people to help with that. So our business kind of went like through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
good.
Yes and
So what
no. No, it's always good.
so what advice do you have for like if there's an aspiring author who's considering writing a book?
Just get started. If you have an idea, write that idea down and then dig into what you think it might take to make that idea come to life. Because if you're given an idea, there's probably a reason. So
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah, don't be afraid to. Here's the thing, right? Um, when you write something, when you create something, when you are artistic or creative in whatever avenue, whether it's music or painting or writing, there's this little tiny voice in there that's like, what if they don't like it? And you just have to have the other side be a little bit louder that says, so what if they don't?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Just, it's not going to be for everybody. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Everybody's not going to like Dr. Chris and Charlie. And I'm all right with that.
But
Because there are
that's
going to be other people who love it.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so what can we expect from LaunchCrate this year?
Whew, my goodness. So we have, yeah, we have quite a few books that are coming out by some new authors. So we started 2020, we were supposed to publish two different authors. And then, the pandemic hit and they were talking about how the virus stays on paper and cardboard. And I was like, that's a bad idea. We're just not, we're not going to send books to people's houses that might potentially spread the virus. So we postponed one until October. We have another book that's coming out. The other one that was supposed to come out in 2020 is now coming out at the end of this month. So it'll be out in late February. And then we have a book coming out in late March, and then we're off to the races from there. So should be about 10 books released this year under the LaunchCrate brand. So they're LaunchCrate authors, which means they're getting that 60% of the profit. And
Nice.
we're spreading the word about their awesome and brilliant ideas that will hopefully help to impact the world. We are also doing more idea to editor cohorts. So folks with an idea that don't know where to start, they can come to us and join one of these cohorts and we'll help them to get their manuscript started. What else is coming? Our last summer, we also had the chance to do a picture book camp with kids, which was so much fun. Yeah. So that'll be back in June of this year. And then there's some other stuff that's sprinkled in there as well. We have our podcast, which is kind of on the back burner because launching these books are priority for us. So
yeah. What's your
hopefully that will
podcast about
return.
or going to be about?
It's just similar to this, right? People's stories and wins, losses, how they overcame the challenges, and really getting people to think creatively. So we do some interactive storytelling with a random roll of some story cubes, and we'll tell a story together. And then I have them draw something where they can't see the image, but I have to like guide them through the drawing. So it gives people a chance to tap into their inner child again, whether they are listening or whether they are the guest as well.
That sounds fun. You'll have to let me know when that drops so I can tune in.
Yeah, you're gonna have to be a guest on there. So I'm bringing you on. You guys saw that, right?
I'll have to pray about that.
I love it.
Okay, so then where can people follow you?
We are at LaunchCrate on everything, whether that's Facebook or Instagram. We're on Twitter. We don't tweet that much. maybe like 7 times a year.
Yeah.
Maybe 7 times a year. So those are the best ways to follow LaunchCrate, or you can just, check out our website, launchcrate.com. If they're looking for me, they can find me at CL Fails on Instagram, or Twitter. Again, I don't tweet that much. Stay busy. And I think it's author CL Fails on Facebook if you want to follow my author journey there.
Perfect. Okay. Well,
Awesome.
Cynthia, it was great talking to you, as
This was a
always.
lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Let me know when the podcast drops so I can.
So
It
you
can
can
be
be
an exclusive. Yes. So I can listen and
uh-huh.
then give me an exclusive on the Sugarplums.
Awesome. I'm going to put you on as one of the beta readers for the third book.
Oh,
How about
yes,
that?
please.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
Cool.
We'll talk later.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Okay, bye.
Bye.